Hello, everyone. Welcome, one and all, to another exciting Tuesday Eventide Patreon stream. How is everyone doing here this fine evening? I hope you have all had a wonderful week. I know that I have. I've been busy getting stuff ready, getting things out to all of you. It's been an exciting month, and here we are now. The first stream of May already. I kind of announced I was bringing this back in February, and boy, the time has really flown by. We've done an awful lot of content in the past couple months, and I've got a lot more planned. It's going to come out at a bit more of a metered pace now, because I've burned through a lot of the stuff that I had prepped in advance. But, now we're generating brand new content, which is really exciting to me, because some of this stuff has been sitting for years now. Welcome everyone to the Tuesday stream. Today we are going to talk a bit about wrapping up the first part of Wolfren's Fate with my playtest groups. They have one session left, and both those sessions are going to happen in the next week. So when we meet again here next Tuesday, it is going to be talking about the wrap-up of the first part. But we still have at least probably, I would say, one session of part one left, and then we'll be moving on to part two. So what I want to do here today is talk a bit about what I expect to see out of the last session. And then I want to do a look ahead at level 2. Now, folks, if you haven't picked it up already, and I'm sure you all have, but if you haven't, Wolfren's Fate, the first part, is now available for all of you. You can grab this exciting PDF and give it a read through and think about maybe running it with your group. You can do that right now. That PDF is available both through the Patreon. It was sent to everyone directly. It is also on MinotaurGames.com. It is kind of the first thing anchoring the GM's guide section. I do have more content to put in there. We've talked about some of it recently. I just have not had the chance. This past week has been a bit of a doozy for me. But that said, we've got some exciting stuff coming up here in the future. I've got some information on secret societies I want to put up that we've talked about. I've got some information about plots and ploys and Wormbone that I want to put up and allow folks to start daydreaming with and playing with. So, make sure to grab that adventure. That'll be up for now until I codify it into a final version PDF. That'll incorporate probably more changes, more alterations, maybe even some more art. It'll include all the pieces, but that won't be on the Patreon. That'll be on drive-thru and other sites. And that is the point where people at the Lord and Master tier get it for free, and scholars get it for half price. So we're getting there. We've still got a ways to go before I think the first part goes out to the public, but I am pretty excited about that. I also want to get the player's guide out to the public. That is a longer term goal because, frankly, I need to make sure I get a professional editor to go through it. There's a lot of material there. So, that is really exciting. I've got someone in chat saying that they're planning on running it very soon. That is fun. I am super excited about that. Okay, so let's talk a bit about the last session for my two playtest groups. Both playtest groups have kind of mirrored each other, and I mean mirrored almost literally. They went in opposite directions in the dungeon. They've ended at the same place multiple times now, so that's kind of interesting. The first session, both groups made it into the tower, both groups made it into the entry hall, dealt with that room, and both groups ended the session leaving that room, but they were going in different directions. In the second session, both groups went through two rooms on the outside and met. They didn't actually meet, but both groups finished their sessions in the same room again. I mean, at least it's running consistently time-wise. So both groups are now kind of back at the same spot, but the way it works is that both groups still have two rooms to explore. And once they've done with those two rooms, they're functionally done. Now, in our previous session, both groups took about 3 hours to get through 3 rooms. They were going through about a room an hour. Each one has a fight or some sort of challenge or something. So I expect the 2 rooms that are left will probably eat up 2 hours of my 3-hour session. But I've got a little bit of conclusion and wrap up that I think should pull everything together nicely. Now, the way this is going to work is they're both kind of going to go the opposite way now, going into rooms that the other group explored the previous week. All of these chambers have now seen tweaks and adjustments based on the playtest feedback I got from the first round. And that is now reflected in the document. So they're both going to see slightly different versions of the thing the other group already faced. Right, so both the haunts got revisions. There were some changes made to the animated oven and things like that. So tweaking, adjusting, tuning. I expect that they will be smoother encounters. It may even be a bit simpler for them. Now, there's another aspect of this too, in that all the rooms that they are about to go in are rooms that the Thunder Company has already been in on both sides. Right, so that is going to reduce the threat of the various encounters, and it's also going to reduce the treasure that they find. So these last rooms may go a little faster just because they're meant to be kind of mop-up encounters, where it's clear that the other groups have already been in there. Those choices have been made. The groups went in different directions. They're going to get different things. So when they're done, one of the things that I'm going to do is just do an analysis of what loot they actually got out of the adventure up to this point. And figure out whether or not they're ahead, behind, where they're supposed to be, what the point is in terms of loot. In the back of the adventure, there is kind of a cheat sheet summary that's there to help GMs kind of easily sort the XP that the players got and the treasure that they got. If they do everything in the dungeon, they can get about halfway to 2nd level just in that one dungeon. They get about 450 XP. I think what's more likely is that the groups will get between 4 and 450. They'll miss some of the story awards, I think. But maybe only one. So I think 440 is pretty likely. But I'm going to want to compare that against the treasure they've gotten and make sure that they're roughly on target. That I don't have to be too close. 1st to 2nd level, it's like, oh, you got an extra 5 gold. Look at you, you're rich. 2 levels later, that's a pittance. But here it still matters. So I got to be careful with that. So, but once they're done with the rooms, both groups have to complete the dungeon. They have to finish up the chores and kind of calming the major domo, right? Both groups are on the track for this. I suspect most groups that play through this will pick up on the fact that calming the major domo is a big task, and it's something that if you do, there's probably some reward. They don't know what that reward is. They have no idea how it's going to play into things, but I think both groups have clued in on the fact that this is something important that they should do. So that's coming together nicely. I think that plot element worked. I didn't even need to kind of pull them along by the cheek. There's some not incredibly subtle clues, but frankly, it's not like it says, hey, go do this. So I think for some groups, they will miss it and have to get the reminder before they leave. But I think most groups will pick up on it just because of the way the encounter is constructed. So I expect that both groups will deal with the last 2 encounters relatively quickly, and then probably, considering both groups did 2 chores for the major domo, and you only have to complete 4 to calm him. And both groups have 2 obvious ones left. Both groups skipped the first room, which was like just cleaning up. And so neither group did that, but they didn't exactly have a very strong pointer to do that. So, but they only need to get 4 or 5, and if they get the other 2, they'll be fine. So I think we are at a point where both groups are going to be in a situation where they have calmed the major domo without really having to double back and kind of go back through rooms, which is good. Now, assuming they do all this, they're going to get access to the lower level, right? And that's kind of part 2 of the adventure, which is what I want to talk about here in a bit. But I honestly think at that point in time, the groups are going to be pretty spent. Most of them are running pretty light on resources as it is. They've burned spell slots. Medicine is only taking them so far. Most of them are now carrying damage from fight to fight because they just can't get rid of all of it before the next encounter. So they're getting pretty exhausted, which is kind of the point here, right? I mean, they've got, you know, a grand total of like 6 encounters to get through for their adventuring day. Now they're not exactly hard, but it's just a cumulative effect. So I'm thinking that they'll probably want to leave, and if they don't, if they try and go straight on down to the lower level, that's when the major domo is going to be like, you all look beat up, I should take you to the guest rooms. Of course the guest rooms have been destroyed, they were on the upper level. But that's going to be the joke. Should they ask, the major domo will be like, oh, well, I should take you up to the guest rooms, and they don't exist anymore. But instead the players can leave and go get some rest up in Wormbone. So I expect that both groups will do that, which is good, because I don't think I'm going to have the second level ready for the first group later this week. I'm still in the middle of writing. But when they leave, that's when they encounter the town guard, who's going to want to debrief them, and they're going to meet Lieutenant Havanok. And I think Havanok is going to become a recurring character throughout this story as kind of the local guard contact for the player characters. And I think this is also the point. I'm getting into some points that I haven't fully decided yet. I think this is the point where I'm going to drop on them that Gryphon Nimblebrow was found dead. And let them deal with that bombshell. And I think that'll spark a whole bunch of discussion. And I think Havanok is even going to question them a bit on this. So this may be a change to part 1 of the adventure, actually. But I will probably do that in the conjunction of parts 1. But yeah, I think this is the part where Havanok is like, so, you were seen with Gryphon last night. Can you tell me about that, right? And is going to kind of interrogate them while also getting their story about what happened in the dungeon. This is also when they are going to have their loot searched, and things that are of value to the town will be confiscated and paid for. So that whole piece should be pretty interesting. It should be a good, fun role-playing encounter. Yeah, the snake oil salesman is going to be sweating bullets. But after that, they should get a chance to get some rest, and I may even allow them to do some shopping around town. So I may do a little bit of light town exploration, not like deep role-playing or anything, but more just like light shopping to let them go to a place or two and do a bit of shopping, maybe even meet NPC or two that they may not meet until part 2 of the adventure. Like, not even the second half of this first part, but actually part 2 when they're exploring the town and looking for Wolfren's, like part 2 of the adventure. I think that'll probably be this week's session for both. It'll end on kind of a more straightforward note. If the groups advance quickly enough, I may have it end on a cliffhanger with them opening the door and proceeding down to level 2, but not actually do any of the encounters there or anything like that. So that's this week. Now, what am I working on? That's the next stage. Right now, I am deep into the scripting and kind of creation of level 2. I actually think this one's going to be a lot easier for me to write and put together for a couple reasons. One, I don't have to put together the entire adventure outline and script like at the beginning of the first one. Two, I don't have to reinvent the wheel on the formatting or anything like that, like all the layout stuff I did that you see in the PDF. I don't have to reinvent that. I can just use what I've already created. It actually goes a lot faster once you've got all those decisions made. Oh, this is the font I'm using. This is the size. This is the art piece. This is the style of sidebars. All that stuff. Once that's decided, it's real easy to just copy and paste stuff around and create kind of new documents. So on the upside, I think a lot of my effort on it's going to go a lot faster. Hold on just. So, where do we go in part 2? So, part 2 is the floor below the level that they are in, and This time, they get to go down there all by themselves. They don't have to deal with the other groups. The other groups kind of get locked out of this because the PCs kind of proved themselves and took care of the Major Domo problem, which really opens up that first floor to full exploration because it's no longer dangerous, although there is still the oven conundrum, but no one knows about that yet. And this allows them to go down to the second floor of the dungeon all by themselves, you know, and just have the run of the place. Now, the second floor is a library, laboratory, and vault. The vault is sealed. That's the ultimate goal, but they can't even get to the vault until they kind of make their way through the library and laboratory. So that's probably going to be, my guess would be probably about 2 sessions worth of encounters. It's not going to be a lot, but if everything goes according to plan, at the end of part 1, they probably are going to level up to 2nd level. And if not at the end of part 1, it'll be in part 2. Not session 1. So first half of part 1, second half of part 1. They may level up at the very end. I don't know. I need to balance the encounter. There may not be enough. They need 550, which is a bit of a tall order unless I start throwing some pretty hard encounters out. And I think that toward the end of this first chunk of the adventure, there probably will be a harder fight. I don't know that if I'll go all the way to severe on first level characters, because that's pretty rough. But I think there is going to be pretty tough foe, and I'll talk about it. So they also, you know, on this floor, they don't have the Major Domo screwing with them, so there's no haunts or anything like that. This second floor is much more of a traditional dungeon. However, it has a very interesting twist, because there is something on the floor of the dungeon, and it is intelligent, and it is devious, and is going to, in fact, be hunting. When they arrive, the first thing that becomes apparent, they arrive and it's kind of the library portion. It goes library, laboratory, vault. And they arrive in this library portion, and it's clear that someone's been here. Not recently. Like, it was probably a long time ago. But someone has been on this floor of the dungeon, and they kind of ransacked the place. And it probably happened after the tower collapsed. Unless Wolfren was really sloppy and didn't know, right? I mean, that would be the assumption. And I think what's going to happen is that somewhere on this floor, there's actually going to be a tunnel leading into the sewers where they broke in to this place. And the individuals that broke in here were looking for things. They specifically kind of ransacked the library. Now, there's some things that they couldn't touch because Wolfren left wards and protections around things. These are also going to prevent the players from messing with these things, too. And one of those things is going to be a series of links. So these are the things that allow spellcasters to access magic, even though the magic is damaged. I haven't really talked to the players about these much. There's only 1 or 2 spellcasters in the group. And as it turns out, they're all occult, so none of them even have links. They don't even really use them. Because all I've got is bards and penumbrists. So, I haven't really had to deal with that. I actually do have one... Actually, now that I think about it, I have 1 sorcerer. 1 arcane sorcerer. And I'm trying to remember what her link. I'll look it up for the next chat. But there's a gallery here of links that Wolfren was studying. Even has primal link. So that's interesting. But the players can't touch any of this stuff. It's all warded. They can't mess with it at all. And neither could the intruders. Now, what they did get access to, they specifically ransacked the library and took certain books. There's entire swaths of the library that are just missing. And they made a mess of the rest of it. So, I think what this is going to include is a list of sections of books that are present. And then, you know, you may be able to do history and try and figure out what is missing by kind of looking between the gaps of like, oh, there's history here, but it's only these years, and then that's it. It ends at this point in time. So there are some things that are missing. And the big thing is that whoever broke into this place, left traps. And in particular, left a trap that summons a rather terrifying shadow creature that is going to be unleashed when they enter this level, and is going to quietly and carefully hunt the player characters and try and pick them off. So that is the big danger. There are other little dangers as well. There's some traps. There's probably, I would guess there's at least 1 or 2 extra little encounters. I'm still trying to figure out exactly what they are. I think having the sewer break into this place in one spot means that I can include some sewer creatures, and then so there's that option. And then I think I may also include some basic servant or something like that. Something that's just been left unattended. But the real danger is this shadow creature that's going to be hunted. And this will be a new monster. So part 2 will have a brand new monster in it, and it will probably be the toughest fight that the players have faced so far. So should be interesting. I think that, the thrust of this second part is kind of exploring the library, exploring the laboratory, which will lead to the final fight, and then from the laboratory gaining access to the passageway that leads to the vault. And that way is still blocked. There is another gateway blocking their path. This also stymied the intruders. And this gateway is sealed by a ward that can only be opened by someone bearing Wolfren's signet ring. And that is the end of kind of the first part of this adventure. Is they have explored everything there is to explore. There really is nothing else to check out. And from that point in time, they can call it a day and start the second part of the adventure, which is searching for Wolfren's. So that's what I've got to build here in the next, I've got about 3 weeks before I have to actually start running that content. So I'm going to be working pretty hard to get that stuff up and running. I am hoping, as a matter of fact, I'm not even hoping, I'm going to say that content should be up to all of you before the end of the month. So my goal is to really make sure that these things are flowing out at about a rate of one a month. Just to keep me moving and to keep you all fed with kind of new, fun, interesting Eventide content. Throughout all this, I'm going to continue to update the website and add that GM material. That's my other big goal right now. I've, of course, got some art that's coming in, right? I've got, here in the next, now that I'm looking at it, the body shots that I ordered are due in less than 2 weeks. So that'll be, I ordered a body shot of a Cenosaur elf, the Gloamling, which we showed off last time. I think we did. Showed that off, didn't we? I don't remember if that was in a secrets or not. No, I think it was in the Tuesday stream 2 weeks. So we showed off the Gloamling, and I've got a Penumbrous sketch. The only other piece of art outstanding from that particular artist is the cover of the Player's Guide / this whole kind of Icecar Valley Player's Guide and GM Guide. That whole product may just have the same cover. So, assuming it comes in the way I want. So, I'm excited to see it, but I haven't even seen a sketch yet. The artist is focusing right now on spots, the body image. Full body, no background, like we call them in the industry. So that's what I've got going on there. I for those of you who have grabbed the adventure PDFs, you might have noticed that they do indeed contain art. Black and white line art. It's stock art. I didn't order this specifically, but all of it fits the adventure rather well. I was very happy to find a stock art pack that was relatively inexpensive. That included a bunch of stuff that was very applicable, including a great illustration of centipedes and stacked books and all that. So, you know, not the perfect art for the piece, but you know, adds a little flair, adds a little fun to the adventure. I hope folks have liked that. I didn't really tell anybody I was gonna add some stuff like that, but it was kind of a spur of the moment thing as I was pulling together the PDF. I was like, oh, this is a lot of text, just endless text. I wonder if there's some way I could add some spice to this, and I did some looking around and found some stuff that was pretty good. I'm pretty happy with it. That artist did a mountain of artifacts. I've got about 500 pieces. A lot of them are not going to be useful to me, but frankly, if I only use 50 of them, it'll be well worth my time. So that's pretty good. What else we got going on right now? I think that's probably close to it. I don't want to have necessarily a really short chat here today, but frankly, my work right now is focused on you know, getting the last bits of the first adventure run, and then getting the second half written and put together. And I think that's going to go relatively smoothly. I just got to carve out some time to put in some. But I think that's all coming together nicely, and obviously I've got players who are chomping at the bit for more content. So it's a great motivator. I'll say that. Having a playtest group that like meets on a regular schedule means I can't slack. I have to get the work done, which was kind of the point of doing, you know, all of this. It keeps me honest. I work better when I have a deadline and when I have folks that I'm responsible to, both players and players. So that's worked out pretty well and is keeping me on. If you'd asked me 4 or 5 months ago, hey, do you think all of Eventide will be out to the public in a year? I'd be like, no, come on. But here we are. So, you know, we're really getting some content out. Pretty excited. So I think we got plenty of time for questions here tonight. I'll open up the floor to that if anybody has any. We'll let this go for a bit if we have a little bit of a shorter gathering here this week. I suppose wrong with that. But yeah, I'm pretty excited to continue building some stuff. I've been trying to sort out a number of kind of bigger world questions lately. These aren't super exciting, but you know, I've got some bigger questions about the setting itself. I kind of want to make some decisions on, even if they're not set, even if they're not really implemented in a ton of places. Like, you know, what's the deal with orcs in Eventide? You know, that's a big question and kind of a thorny one. I don't want to have, you know, really, Eventide isn't the kind of world where any ancestry is pure evil or pure good or anything like that. But I need to find a route forward there that the thorny history of orcs that frankly is stuff that I'd rather not, you know, push in my, you know, same goes for like drow and stuff like that. So there's some hard questions to kind of sort out and answer out in there. You know, I do have a half orc in one of my groups, so yes, orcs are in my game, but I haven't really said much about it. I've got some ideas, tying them together with kind of the story of the ogres and stuff, but I'm not sure I'm set. So I'm still just kind of playing around with some of it. There's, of course, kind of larger monolithic questions about how humans are versus how elves are versus dwarves are and things like that. But I think a lot of that stuff I've kind of already set down, dealt with. But there's definitely some broader questions that I need to kind of sort. Are orcs part of the Zankar Empire? Yes, they are. That is one of the few places I believe they are currently mentioned. So the Zankar is filled with the peoples that frankly aren't very magically inclined. So humans, goblins, orcs all have a home in Zankar. So yeah, there is some of that. There are some ogres there too, some that have escaped the kind of sickness that overtook their people and kind of made a bunch of them into feral monsters. Yeah, well, I mean, I don't necessarily, you know, could they be shock troops or something for the Empire? Yeah, I want them to have more nuance than just like orc smash, right? It's been done to death. I just haven't found a unique angle for them yet that I think speaks to the world and speaks to what I want to be out of the world. So that's a hard question to answer and not something I can necessarily just brainstorm here because frankly it involves some things that I haven't talked about. What about hobgoblins and bugbears? That's a good question. I don't really know that I've spoken about them much at all. Really, almost basically not at all. Hobgoblins, I would assume, have some related ancestry to goblins. They may just be like distant cousins that are all goblins. I haven't really decided yet. I haven't really thought about it much. But I think there's probably something there that I could play with. Bugbears, I have no idea. Right now, bugbears are just monsters. But if I play them up more as a playable, ancestry as people with homes and cities, then that won't do, right? If the moment they become like people, yeah, then that's different. I need to figure that out, and I just haven't yet, right? Bugbears traditionally haven't been something that I play at all, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily on one side of the divide. It's a thorny issue, and something I'm going to figure out. Have we covered minotaurs? No, we have not. I guarantee you they're in the world, though, somewhere, and they're important. I just don't know where yet. The Emperor is not a minotaur. No. The currently, Zankar is ruled by an empress, if I recall correctly. But right now, I believe empress. Human. I have a lot to say about Zankar, but this is not the time and place, because frankly, some of it's still in flux. I know what the deal is there, but I don't know all the pieces, and I don't know how they all fit together. I do know why Zankar is the way it is and why it's doing the things it's doing. That I know. But what I don't know is all the fine-grained specifics, right? There's a bunch of kind of very specific little questions I need to answer. That until I kind of have those things solved, I can't really talk too much about Zankar, but that's okay because we're not in Zankar. I think somewhere in this first adventure, the players may have a run-in with the Zankar 8 who are in Wolfren, because there are some ins. But I'm not sure yet. I need to kind of figure out how all that's. I know there is a meta story there about a rogue that is on the loose, in hiding in Wormbone, that's wanted by Zankar, and the agents in town are specifically. Then again, so are the Blue Banners. So it could be an interesting story. So in one of my GMing seminars on designing campaigns, you mentioned that you'd like to make the introductory adventure relatively routine. So it is routine. I think this gets to my bigger point. How do I like to, create the first taste of an adventure? The first adventure should feel routine. It should feel like a very ordinary adventure, but ordinary for the world and setting that it's in. And am I dragging them directly into a giant meta plot in the first adventure? No. But what I am doing is showing them pages from the big plot, right? I'm giving them glimpses of what is out there, but I'm not explaining it yet. It's the polar bear on the island, but this actually has a reason, right? It's something mysterious that I'm not going to answer right now. Who broke into this place and left something terrible here? It's not going to be answered in this adventure at all. As a matter of fact, this is probably the only time I'm going to touch it in this adventure. Although at the end, should they free Wolfren will at least be like clearly concerned about what has happened. Yeah, we don't talk about Zankar. Yeah, so I do like to start out the overall adventure itself should feel routine, should feel very ordinary. I need to set a baseline, right? And the story needs to have a beginning, middle, and end. It can't be, the first adventure can't be step 1 in a 58-part plot line. I think you're biting off more than you can chew. What I do like to do is have it be a nice, succinct adventure that then drops 4 or 5 gigantic hooks that talk about the future and talk beyond the current story. So will they get a sense of that bigger meta plot in this? Yes, they're going to get a taste of it. They'll smell it as it passes by. Right? There's clearly some weird things going on here. There's clearly some strange questions that they cannot answer right now that they're going to have to come back to later. And even once they get to the end and free Wolfren, Wolfren can't give them all these questions either. But Wolfren can set them on the path. And that's the kind of key to this whole thing. So in a way, if I view Wolfren as the central hub, the central quest giver, this entire adventure is how we met Wolfren. And meeting Wolfren is critical to, the entire next adventure, which will be its own standalone story that just happens to marry right to the end of this one. Talk about the thing. Now, I think doing something like that back to back, if I'm looking forward into the campaign construct, right? This first one is, the one where they met Wolfren. The second one is the one where they did a job for Wolfren to help Wolfren get back on his feet. The third one's probably going to be something entirely unrelated. And will probably be a side quest or a distraction or something like that. Just a standalone story piece. Because the one thing I'm not a fan of as a GM is just, it's always the main plot all the time. That's the only plot there is. Nothing else happens in this world. I don't like that as a storyteller or as a GM, so that's probably not how I'm going to do. Now, that said, I'm also going to leave room in this campaign to do character-based subplots as well. Because I have character backgrounds from each one of these folks. And, trying to find a way or get a way to use that would be good. For not only my group's kind of interest level, but also just to kind of make the world feel a bit more reactive. Now, that's stuff I can't and won't necessarily give out to all of you, but I may use that as an opportunity to put out kind of generic side quests that you can throw at your player characters if they're interested and things like that. I may do like little one-shot, like literally just, this is one night of adventure. It's 2 or 3 encounters tops. It is a succinct, contained story that is, go pick these berries for this shopkeep who needs. Good luck. There's monsters. Find them. Right, Maybe there's something interesting that gets revealed, maybe not. Just a fun little encounter that involves the world. So I don't really think they get hit with the big plot fish right away. They at the end of this, they themselves are the ones who brought this thing back to them. Which is something I really like. It's a theme I return to over and over and over again, that the players are in some way, shape, or form the prime agent in the campaign's movement, right? That is really important to me. It's more important than just like, this villain is loose and doing villainous things. You can do that. I'm not saying you can't. And in fact, there are times when you should do that. But I feel like for the big arc, for the campaign arc, the players need to have a hand in it going, in it moving. And that doesn't just mean in the going and doing it. It means in why it is happening to begin with. It needs to be tied to their decisions. Are there any player side plots that I'm particularly excited to go work with? I'm going to do a report on these two folks. I'm kind of letting the players have some time to kind of feel natural in their characters' skins. And they've answered all these questions for me, but I'm not holding them to them until kind of the end of this first adventure. At that point in time, I'm going to ask them to lock it in place, and then I'm going to analyze them, create kind of brief blurbs, and I'll share all those with all of you. And I also think I will probably analyze all of them for future plot implications. I know there are some, bad blood with siblings. There's, some of them are wanted. Some, at least one of them kind of doesn't know how they even got to Wormbone and woke up here with amnesia. One is a fallen noble who desperately wants to get back into the high life. There's a lot of kind of fun bits and stories there that I think we can play with. But as far as which one right now, boy, I don't know. It depends on kind of the players and how much they engage. Especially if I start throwing pieces at them, because I oftentimes like to throw little breadcrumbs at them and see if they pick them up and eat them, or if they just kind of ignore it. And because not all players actually want to play with their backstory, they don't want to be the focus like that. So I try not to force it, but I do try and give them, you know, I hand the thing right to them and be like, is this something you want? I got a question here. Do I see this as a 1 to 20 campaign, or do I just see how it develops? I'm going to kind of let it develop. I actually don't think the whole thing will be 1 to 20. I think that's probably too ambitious, not just in terms of my own time, but in terms of my groups and their long-term interest in keeping a group together long-term is challenging. Are any of them truth seekers? Oh boy. Did any of them take the truth background? I don't think so. Maybe one of them did. I'll have to double check. But you know, as far as the overall arc, I think what I'd probably prefer to do is create a nice succinct story that goes 1 to 7, 1 to 8, something like that. Maybe 1 to 9, 1 to 10. Somewhere in that neighborhood, do like half the campaign and then kind of let it be the thing it's going to be. And maybe if I still have groups that are interested, then I do another story that picks up where that one left off, and it's kind of a different thing. But we'll see. I'm kind of leaving the future a little unwritten on that front. I've got, whenever I design these plots, I like to call it an accordion. I can stretch it or I can squeeze it. And it's going to make noise one way or the other. It's just a matter of where I want it to be. Yeah, the truth seekers are the folks looking into the 7 truths. I don't think any of the players have that, but it wouldn't surprise me if they start getting more interested in it as things come together. Because Wolfren is in that group, right? Wolfren, back when he was doing it, wasn't really a thing, but Wolfren has long been interested in that. And in fact, that's the entire kind of focus of his study and research. So, you know, we'll see. We'll see whether or not any of the players kind of pick that up and run with it. I think in each group I've got at least 1 or 2 goobs who will pick it up. And in particular, I think I have 1 or 2 players who will frankly be fascinated by the mystery. I think in both groups I've got at least 1 or 2 players who that sort of thing is like, that's a hook for them. Any sort of mystery that is not something they can easily puzzle out or solve, inherently kind of draws their interest to the story. So we'll have to see how that kind of comes together as we go on. I don't expect to see much of it here in this first bit, although, to be honest, I think if I have both groups end with the reveal that Greyfawn is dead and they get questioned about it, I mean, that in and of itself will start telling them that there's a lot more to this plot than just a simple dungeon run, right? I wanted it to feel simple, but in actuality be complex and filled with, you know, kind of questions. And I think as they've explored it, they've certainly come away with a bunch. Like, Wolfren has some odd stuff in his place for you know, a wizard, right? It's just like, oh, there's this weird fascination with old elven stuff. What's the deal with that? Well, the elves were the ones who were here when Eventide happened. That's why he has it. That's why he's here, because he was collecting old elven relics from that time period. So I don't know that they've put that together, but I think at least one of them have. I think one of them read the world lore and actually kind of was like, because they have access to the player's guide as well. As a matter of fact, they have a real quick and dirty PDF version of it so that they can read it without having to scroll through a website. And for them, yeah, I think at least 1 or 2 of them have really dug into it. And when they found the tapestry in area 5, the big one, in the elevator, their eyes lit up and they were like, I think I know what that is. And that was really interesting. That was very rewarding to me as the person writing this campaign to see someone go, huh, that's ominous, right? There was a lot of that, and I don't know what they're thinking right now. I don't know if they think that Wolfren's a villain or something. I don't know if they just, I don't know what they think. They haven't really talked about it, and I'm not going to press. But there is definitely some interest there. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. I'm really excited to hear if any of you run this adventure and what your players think about it. I'll be interested to hear those sorts of stories. That sounds like perfect fodder for the Discord channel, so make sure to post it there if you do. I'm sure the other folks would be interested in hearing about your experiences as well. Folks, this is now we're moving into the third month here of the Patreon kind of being fully up and functional again. You know, there was a lot of fluctuation in the early days with, frankly, a lot of folks from the Patreon from like 3 years ago. A lot of them cleared out, but a lot of them stayed. And by that, I should say a lot of you stayed, and I appreciate that. I really do want to thank everybody for sticking around and helping to make this project go. It's really hard sometimes to feel like I'm making much progress. It's slow, right? You know, I'm running this and play testing it and revising it. I'm doing the entire thing all myself. And that means that it's pretty slow going. And to top it off, it's currently only available to folks who are on the Patreon. So it's hard to get a lot of traction on various other sites. So, you know, I appreciate all of you for sticking with me and walking down this path with me. And I hope you let your friends know about it and other people in your game circles, because the more the merrier. I'd love to get up to 100 patrons. Right now we're at 90. I think we can get to 100. Doesn't seem that far off, but, you know, we got to work on it. I'll keep pushing. You keep helping. That's all I can ask. All right, folks. That's about all I have here for today. I've got a Twitch stream coming up here in just over 10 minutes. I want to show everybody the brand new credits. I'm super excited about them because I fixed a thing and now they're cool. So I'm gonna sign off here, and folks, thank you all for coming. We will be back here next Tuesday to talk about the wrap up of part 1 and fully delve kind of deeper into part 2. I hope to have a bunch of it written by then, and we can take a sneak peek as it starts coming together. All right, folks. It's also a side hustle. Yeah, that's right. This is a side hustle related to my regular hustle. It's so much hustle. All hustle. All right, folks. Thank you all for watching. We will see you next Tuesday at 7 p.m. right back here for more talk about Eventide. Take care, everybody. We will see you next time.